Hi, Kurt Jacobs, JMA. Again, I guess as a merit review question, is the broader than just ORAN interoperability specifications, but more the Open RAN, the other infrastructure, because we're going to have to deliver a system to the verticals, which includes the core, includes the IT infrastructure, the virtualization. If we're showing interoperability and demonstration that it's more open and gives more flexibility, will that be considered favorably, or is this just narrowed down to what's in the RAN, ORAN specifications?
Yes. So, the thought is so you're talking about SRFA 1.
Yes.
Right? So in SRFA 1, right, let's take, for example, you've got a mining solution, right? And your vertical is going to be the mining solution. It may not be necessary for you to have a full back-end set of systems, right, to test this prototype, right? So let's say your idea is we are going to access certain information in the RIC, which is going to allow us to write some new beamforming algorithms. And these beamforming algorithms are going to allow RF to, instead of going just this way, I can now make a right turn because there's a tunnel there, right? I've developed that type of intelligence where I can do that. And as a result of that, we're going to have pervasive coverage, and there's going to be a lot of great business outcomes that come along with that, right? Now, in the core, right, in a typical core, you're going to have, there's lots and lots of functions, right? There's provisioning, authentication, FCAPs, right? All of that stuff. Well, to really test this particular prototype, do you necessarily have to have, an authentication process that gets tested that shows that this particular UE is a paid subscriber of the AT&T network or what have you? Maybe not. Right? So not all of that sort of back-end IT may be necessary just to test something as simple as a beamforming algorithm, right? To say, look, can it make a right turn when I say it can? Yes. And therefore, right, it effectively gets proved out from a technical perspective. So, so all of that having been said, right, I don't know that there's necessarily going to be a need to have all of the other infrastructure that is required. In certain cases, I suppose there could be, but I would imagine that all of that would already be in place in the MNO's network anyway.
I guess I'm asking the question more that if some of those other functions are necessary and in showing the flexibility to that core, application use case that we're showing, is that considered favorable to, and that it's open in that way? Because we're looking at, more open system. This is more Open RAN, the broader term, versus the ORAN specific term.
Yeah, I suppose that is certainly all goodness to the degree that you can do it. I think, though, at the end of the day, we're going to be assessing, does this really prove out value to the vertical, right? That's going to be the biggest question that needs to get answered here, right? Does it prove out value to the vertical? And if the answer to that is yes, and oh, by the way, we've got a bunch of other open stuff here that we can bring to the table, then great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello again. I think probably a lot of people in the room are already aware of this, that quite a few industry verticals rely upon test ranges to prove out prototypes in operationally relevant environments before they they introduce anything that might be risky into their production environment. So would we meet the requirement to demonstrate in a field environment if we're demonstrating, proving out a prototype? This is obviously SRFA 1 in a test range.
So there's a series of requirements in SRFA 1 that sort of break down what we're looking for in a field test, and it has to basically look like what a commercial deployment would look like.
It would look like the real thing. Yep.
So if you meet that requirement and the other ones that are listed in I think it's the technical proposal section of SRFA 1, then I think the answer is yes. That's
okay.
Okay.
Perfect. And second and last question from me. NOFO 2 used 2 3-letter acronyms that our industry really likes. TRL, Technical Readiness Level, MRL, whatever that means. So I only worry about the former, but thank you, Eric. Just out of curiosity, why has NOFO 3 seemed to rather assiduously avoided? I couldn't find TRL or MRL anywhere within NOFO 3, and I read it Christmas Eve too. And thank you in advance. Is there a reason for that, or you don't have to tell me? I mean,
it's not because we don't like the acronyms TRL or the concept. It's partly for frankly readability and accessibility,
Okay.
because TRL and MRL are not terms that everyone's familiar with. I think especially when we're talking about industries like vertical industries who maybe are not engaged in that technical aspect. So that's, I think, one of the main reasons that we decided not to include it.
okay, and that makes sense because there's a lot of debate about, well, does TRL 7 mean this or that? So makes sense. Thank you.
Hassan Aziz from XRCom. We're at Austin, Texas, as startup. Question actually related to the TRL as well. So how do you evaluate the starting point? Is there a way to say, okay, you have to be at a certain level before a proposal is submitted? That's my first question, and I have 2 more. And
I think we define it as saying you have to have at a minimum functional requirements to find.
okay. And that means an end-to-end system working in the case of SRFA 1?
No, defined requirements. We're not asking for a system that's up and running prior to submitting application.
I got it. Okay. The second question is in terms of the verticals, is satellite or NTN a use case?
Sure.
Okay. And I guess my third question is actually related to the verticals again, like X apps are on the rig is something that's considered as part of the SRFAs, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
I had one more question. If an applicant does not assert IP rights, it is assumed that it has GPR, government purpose rights, for what is produced as part of this grant. How does that work?
I believe that is true. If you're coming in with IP rights per CFR 200, you should be covered to protect your IP rights.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what is produced as part of the grant, will it be assumed as government purpose rights?
So
Sure.
What I can say is any applicant that is that wishes to retain rights to any IP that's developed during the grant program needs to provide an intellectual property plan laying out various information about that. So I'm not sure if that goes any way towards answering your question.
Kind of. It's just this question of if let's say you don't do that, does the government claim GPR on what is produced as part of the grant, as you would see in other federal government contracts?
I'm not sure, to be honest. We might have to get back to you on that one. I don't want to give you an incorrect answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.